Amber said she's headed this way, so she should be here soon. You guys are slack asses.
I was trying to leave and I had to come nice and Brady was talking to you and I was like, I really gotta go. I really gotta go. Where are you going?
26.
Yeah. Hey, how are we staying, how long are we staying on Saturday?
4 o'clock?
Are we really?
No.
I gotta figure out what to do with my kids.
We're staying till noon will be the absolute latest.
Yeah, okay. That's when they could come to town and ride their bikes and go to the park and, you know, whatever.
Do what kids do.
Yeah.
Break windows and steal things.
Yeah. This town needs a lot of make it work. So, I don't want to do that. I didn't know. And then, I'm leaving early tonight. I got to watch one of my kids' baseball games. I have to. I'm missing one. I found me some EMT pants today.
Where?
No clue.
Where?
That angelic girl.
George.
I found out about this place through the radiology girl at school. Yeah, student ID, you get a 20% discount. So, that EMT test for me. I'm going on a bank that I'm overwhelmed that I'm going to pass.
I got it. I think everybody's fine. You look at everybody.
Hey, that's good. I'm the only one in here.
I said most, all right? These slide doors.
There's a lot. We can do it longer, isn't it?
103. That'll take us to 8 o'clock. Depending on how much freaking Amelia talks. That guy's a talker.
No, I got a lot of questions to do.
Lottie-dottie, you like to party?
Which actually is kind of cool because I already did like my medical terminology.
Uh-huh.
So kind of some of this stuff is so exciting.
Yeah. Well, should we wait for Amber to give her a couple more minutes?
How far out was this?
I don't know. I didn't ask that.
You know, if we just leave the radio, so we start.
Well, I mean, it's been
That doesn't drive me as fast as you.
probably. I think she's thinking I'm going to like 10 minutes ago. 58, and right now it's 10. Yeah, I mean, even if she's headed that way from Rage, she should be here in a minute. So since it's at 58, so we'll give her another minute or two.
I went and enrolled in the Durham. This is kind of stupid. I went and enrolled in the stupid CNA class. That would be a $35.
You want to do CNA?
I don't want to. I'm trying to do things that I can work while I'm in school
Yeah.
because I can't work in clinical for 40 hours a week.
Well, don't say certified butt wiper or another CNA. They don't think they like that.
I know, but that's what pretty much boils down to. The bottom of the totem pole.
You are the bottom of the totem pole.
You know. I'm trying to look for all good chances to get in the hospital.
Yeah. Well, I mean, how long is the rad tech program? It's what, 2 years?
2 years.
You don't have that much more to do, right? Just a year?
No, I got them too.
Or did you just start?
I just started.
We'll give Amber 2 minutes exactly. So it says 6:10 on my computer, so we'll give her till 6:13. It's a little over 2 minutes, but I don't have a stopwatch yet. 2 minutes. Helen, how was your day? Rebecca's has not joined us. Ellen's not talking to us. She must be getting boozed up in the hot tub like she said she was going to.
I think she's good.
No, she has to go to Quincy in the morning for the meeting.
I can't unplug you.
You can't unplug me.
There we go. I got you. My
Uh,
message was, hurry the hell up, people. I need to leave.
Yeah. You were here all day, right?
Yes. And they wouldn't get the checks out until, well, a little bit after 2.
That's how they roll.
Yep. I thought, I'll pay your ass back.
Today's Thursday, right? Oh yeah.
Yeah, the green checks.
Yeah, I should have turned a green check in. I forgot. I'll do that next week. For mileage to go pick up spine boards.
Yeah.
I've sent off for you guys the CPR cards. Yay, got all those rosters processed. That was a nightmare. I hate processing rosters. Wonder what's her name is.
Crystal,
Well, Crystal, but
Serena.
Serena.
Was she working?
I don't know. I
can't remember what she said.
I don't pay attention to people really. And people tell me things, and I just, yep, acknowledge it. And
Me too.
then I'm like, where the hell are they? And
I
they're
think
like,
you can tell the truth.
don't you remember? They told you. I was like, oh yeah, they did say that, didn't
I can't remember if that was tonight or if that's Saturday.
What's tonight or Saturday?
That she was working. One of the
I don't know. Rhonda would probably forbade her from coming to class anymore. All right, well, it's 6:13, so we're gonna get started. So don't waste any more of Emilio's FIFA time. So, all right, chapter 26, soft tissue injury.
I don't play that much FIFA.
Do what?
I said I don't play that much FIFA.
I would if I'd have listened to somebody lecture. Yeah. Anyway, like I told you guys the last class, soft tissue injuries won't be a hard chapter, even though it appears to be a long chapter. There's just a lot of different things they're going to go over: bruising, it's not a hematoma, no, not a toma, hematomas, bruising, avulsions, degloving injuries, burns, and all this fun stuff that happens to our skin. And soft tissue, I'll just throw it out there. Soft tissue injuries are usually your more gory injuries. They're the more visually disturbing injuries. I only have you to look at. It's kind of weird.
You just look at me.
And so those will be the ones that may or may not turn your stomach. I don't know. But they're the ones that can really cause that impact. Whenever you maybe have a degloving injury and you don't have any skin on the hand, just muscles and stuff, or even a partial degloving are pretty gnarly. And so anyway, there's a lot of information, but all in all, it's actually pretty easy information. It's not like the cardiac where you're learning the flow of the heart. It's not like it's not like you're shocked where you're dealing with different blood pressures and things like that. So it should be a fairly easy chapter, even though it's a little longer. And it can be more interesting. So topic, soft tissue, closed wounds, open wounds, treating specific types of open wounds, burns, electrical injuries, dressing, and bandages. The lab for this was supposed to be doing dressings and bandages. We could do that once we get to our lab days. We could go ahead and go over bandaging. Bandaging, some people are really good at it, and some people suck really bad at it. And it's kind of one of those things you just have to practice it. You put a bandage on it, you put it just tight enough, you're not cutting circulation off. The soft tissue, skin, fatty tissue, muscles, blood vessels, connective tissue, membranes, glands, and nerves. There you go. There's a cut down dissection of it where you have the skin, the fat, the muscle. You have some blood vessels in it. There's some membranes. A lot of time, whenever somebody says you can see the bone, a lot of times it's those membranes, that connective tissue that we're actually seeing. Then you have your nerves and organs. And sometimes you actually do see bone. So soft tissue, major functions of the skin. Protection, water balance, temperature regulation, excretion, shock impact, or shock absorption. So, somebody gets hit with something, that skin takes that impact or that soft tissue takes that impact and disperses it before it reaches like your organs and things like that. So, excretion, everybody sweats, and that's a way that it gets rid of some toxins, but also regulates body temperature, and at times regulates your water balance. So. Back. Skin layers, epidermis, which would be the very top layer that you see. Probably about third grade, you had some kid that was smarter than the rest of the kids, or their parents told them, I don't know. They come to school and they say, I see your epidermis. And all the other kids freak out. They don't know what they're talking about. That's just your skin. Dermis would be the layer above that. Then you have your subcutaneous layers. It's between a cutaneous layer. But wounds often classified as closed or open. So it's pretty obvious what an open wound is, right? You actually have a break in the skin, that soft tissue. Blood's coming out, and a closed wound would be like a bruise. Would be a real simple one, but you have different degrees of bruising too. So there's a picture of it. You have your epidermis, that top layer there. Then you go into the dermis, and then into the subcutaneous layer. And the subcu layer is just right under the skin. It's actually, that makes it look like it's really deep. It's really not. The subcu is really not all that deep. It's fairly shallow. If anybody's ever done like a TB skin test, they just inject that into the subcu tissue, just right underneath the skin, and it's not all that deep. Creates a little bleb, and away you go. And the same thing with we can do subcu epi as a paramedic if they're having an allergic reaction versus use the EpiPen. But same thing. It's really not all that deep, and that makes it look like it's freaking way down there. Like you'd have to get a big old long. Yeah. So. Integumentary anatomy videos. So click on the screenshot. Oh, hey, is it going to play?
Skin consists of an outer epidermis and an inner dermis. The epidermis consists of 5 morphologically distinct layers of keratinocytes.
Wow,
The epidermis provides a physical and chemical barrier, helps regulate fluid and temperature, provides sensation, assists with vitamin D production, plays a role in excretion, and contributes to self-image. Open wounds with damage only to the epidermis are called superficial wounds. The dermis supplies the epidermis with nutrition and support.
That's terrible. So closed wounds. I waited for you guys. I tried.
You try?
Yeah. I waited till 6:13. We've only been going for 7 minutes.
Okay, awesome.
Did you bring me some Spun, honey?
No, we're out of strawberries.
Well, I said take regular. What's wrong with you?
You think I showed up because he was a little bit nervous being in here, just looking at me.
Only had one person to look at.
I'm the only one who's here.
I told Jacqueline that you're bringing us fun honey. Now what? I'm gonna get beat when I get home. You take her a whole case of spun honey? Oh, by the way, my mom wanted to know whether she could buy a case to resell from you guys in Kansas. She does things like she does little presentations about vermicomposting. She's really big into all that kind of stuff. So, I don't know if she needs to get what she needs to get you guys or how if she needs to set something up or whatever. She's from Kansas.
Where at?
Pratt.
Yeah, she'd probably like to be home too.
What's that?
Be home.
Yeah.
She would probably like that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's up, anybody? Once I tell you, you already knew what I'm doing. I mean, that's how,
Yeah.
we're licensed and all that good stuff, so.
Okay. Well, we'll talk about that at another date. But anyway.
I can do a picture first.
What's that?
I can do it on my phone like this and then.
Yeah, you like so you get it going real fast,
On my nose and my
and you do it like that.
I can do it on my nose and my forehead.
Yeah. Come here, let me spin it and put it on your forehead. I'm just kidding.
I'll do it on my nose.
Here, you want to do it? She's gonna do it on her nose. We got human tricks going on here. Oh, Mo.
They have a bag.
Well, you can play with it. I had look at that. I have paper clips.
He likes to play with that. One likes to play with it in class.
So, closed wounds, internal injuries with no pathway from the outside to the injured site. Although skin unbroken, may be extensively crushed tissue beneath, range from minor to life-threatening. Kind of something that is kind of counterintuitive. What do you think is worse, a closed head injury or an open head injury? Yeah, closed is worse because the pressure doesn't go anywhere; it just builds up in the skull. With an open, you do have the possibility to introduce infection and things like that. But immediate life threats, a closed head injury typically is more dangerous than my gosh, I cannot talk. Than an open head injury. So closed wounds, contusions, basically a bruise. Then you have hematomas similar to a contusion. More tissue damage involves larger blood vessels. Usually a hematoma will be raised and it'll be bruised as well, or it'll have that discoloration like a bruise, but it'll also have some raising to it. Closed crush injuries, excessive force crushing or rupturing internal, generally solid organs. We're getting into some serious soft tissue injuries whenever we start talking about crush injuries. I'm going to throw this out there. This is a kind of a learning tip for crush injuries. If you guys run a crush injury, let's say somebody, let's use the loading dock as an example, gets pinned between maybe the back of the semi at a loading dock, and they pretty much cut off circulation. If you can't remove that crush or that truck right away, don't remove it. What's that? Yeah, don't remove that until you can get ALS there. I mean, sometimes we can only do what we could do. EMT basic service, can't get anybody there. You've got to do what you can do. But what happens is with that crush injury, everything's blocked off. And so then you have that, goes into anaerobic metabolism, all those toxins are built up. And as soon as you remove that object, blood pressure drops into the toilet, and then they have a rush of all those toxins into the body. And basically they'll die right away. Whereas if you can get a paramedic or somebody there to start sodium bicarb, or just give them sodium bicarb before they remove it, gives them a better chance of surviving. Like I said, it's one of those things, you got to do what you got to do, but that's something to think about if you actually run a crush injury.
one of my earlier friends used to go like that, the semi. High school kids running off the road, it was kind of against pretty but the cattle is semi, whatever it is, so big.
Yeah.
And when they got there, they were gonna they were gonna try to free, but
Yeah.
they realized that as soon as they take that first refuge from them,
Yeah.
they called all his family, and they left him there, kept him as comfortable as they could.
Yeah.
Left him there until he could say his goodbyes to everybody who was in.
And they removed it.
And they
And
removed it, and within seconds.
Yep.
I don't even think it was 10 seconds.
yeah, it sounds like he had extensive damage. But yeah, that's the story.
He begged them to, he was like, please, just leave me, let me tell my wife goodbye.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah.
He's lucky that he was able to be with it enough to tell her.
Mhm.
So, blast injuries can include open and closed wound types. Potential for massive internal damage is higher than with direct force trauma. Blast injury, you have, I forget how many different impacts you have, but it's not just a single impact. You'll have the initial,
Like 4 or 5 of them.
initial blast wave, a debris field, and then also an impact at the ground. There's at least 3.
You have the pressure wave, the blast wave,
There it is.
the patient displacement, and patient exposure to heavy.
Blast wave, pressure wave, patient displacement. Basically, they're getting thrown onto the ground or whatever, and then exposure to hazardous material. So I missed the blast wave itself. I talked about the pressure wave. The blast wave is what will typically cause a lot of your outer injuries. The pressure wave is what causes your internal injuries. That pressure wave going through you. So there's a good picture of a contusion, and then here's a rupture of a hollow organ. That's not good. Internal laceration and puncture. They can have from a rib being broke, punctures into the what's that? Oh. Then a crush injury with no open wound, so you have that bleeding into the finger. You're gonna have some pressure, and then injury of a solid organ, so you have a lacerated liver right there. Patient assessment: bruising may be indication of internal injury or internal bleeding. Consider mechanism of injury. Fresh injuries are difficult to identify. They can be unless you go there and the patient's crushed, all right? But on the bruising, maybe an indication of internal injury or internal bleeding. You remember where Ellen and I are talking about that? I believe it was a shoulder. It was really bad bruised shoulder. If you have that bruising to the abdomen, you better suspect there's some organs affected there. Patient care, but just because you don't have bruising to the abdomen, a hot abdomen doesn't always have bruising. You could have just pain on palpation or rigidity of the abdomen from the blood building up in the belly. So
The bruises show up pretty much immediately.
they can, and sometimes there have been calls where we'll run it, we'll look at the abdomen, we won't see anything. By the time we get to the hospital and they're laying, all of a sudden you start to see it build up on the sides and stuff like that, where the blood starts to settle. And so then you start to really have that bruising there. But so don't just think because you don't see bruising that they don't have the injury. Go ahead and do the palpation of the abdomen and stuff like that. So patient care, take appropriate standard precautions, manage airway, breathing, and circulation. It's kind of the same thing we do in every single patient. Always manage as if there is internal bleeding and shock if there is any possibility of internal injuries. So even if you don't see that bruising, treat them as if they do have that internal bleeding.
People warm enough to do that.
Yep, keep them warm and oxygenate, get ALS and route if possible. Split extremities that are painful, swollen, or deformed. Ooh, goodness. It's that time of the night. Stay alert for vomiting. Continuously monitor for changes in transport. Apply cold pack to isolated injuries to manage pain and swelling. Open wounds. Open wounds are your more grotesque wounds. So probably in your book, you probably have cooler pictures in the open soft tissue wounds. So, type of wounds, you have abrasions, lacerations, penetrating trauma and punctures, avulsions, and amputations. An avulsion is basically a degloving, or a degloving is basically an avulsion, where it takes that skin, tears it up, and just kind of tears it all the way off. Of a degloving? Yeah. Have you seen the pictures where the people's hands have gone through the meat grinder and it's like, oh man, I'd hate to be that person, or the shredder, little kid finger that went into the shredder. So abrasions, everybody knows what an abrasion is. Basically, the skin has been rubbed off. Whenever we're talking about road rash like you guys are, that's typically an abrasion. Laceration is more of a clean cut, typically something that you see from a knife, like, that somebody got cut with a knife. Penetrating trauma and punctures, if somebody gets stabbed with a knife versus cut with a knife. Also had a guy stabbed with a sword one time. That's pretty interesting. That'd be a penetrating trauma and puncture. And then avulsions, we talked about that. And then amputations, that's pretty obvious, right? You have it pretty much all cut off. So. Open crush injuries, bite wounds. Those could be pretty nasty. You have your blast injuries and high pressure injection injuries. So I don't know if any of you guys really know Vera all that well, but she had a son who somebody connected a high pressure line to a low pressure line in an oil rig. I'm not sure how they got it. Basically, when it blew off, that high pressure decapitated or cut off his, I believe, his skull cap. I don't know if it cut his whole head off. But that would be a high pressure injection injury. Did anybody ever see some of them, those water lasers or whatever? If you got your hand in front of that, that'd be a high pressure injection injury. Does an open wound necessitate using more than just gloves as standard precautions? It does. It can. Obviously, obviously, if they're spurting blood or whatever, then yes, you do. But not all open wounds are that way. I'm not going to glove up, or I'm not going to gown up for all open wounds. Some of them, you just have some road rash all up the arm or whatever. They're not really bleeding, but you rinse it off and put some 4x4s on. But it is something that you do want to take the time to determine whether you need to or not. I think I told you guys about getting blood spit in my eye. That one, the guy's hit in the face with a shovel. And that was probably a call that I should have been wearing more than just gloves. I should have eye protection on, if not even more. Whenever we got done with that call, there's sprays of blood all over an ambulance from him. Here he is. Can't blame the guy. Can't breathe, because all this blood's going into his airway. We can't suction fast enough. And so, and try to get it out, and the whole ambulance is covered in blood. But emergency care for open wounds, strict attention to standard precautions. In addition to wearing gloves, a gown and protective eyewear may be required. Eye protection, I'll tell you guys this. I think eye protection almost should become a standard precaution with your gloves and gowns. You never know when somebody's going to spit in your face. You don't know whenever you're going to walk up and find blood. People that have to wear eyeglasses are almost kind of lucky because they have this 24/7 eye protection in this field. I used to carry, whenever I worked in business service, I used to carry a pair of Oakley that I had with just clear lenses that I'd wear. They're comfortable. I'd wear them all day long or all night long, and give me eye protection. I didn't need glasses. Patient care, exposed wound, clean surface of wound, control bleeding, For all serious wounds, provide care for shock, including administration of high concentration oxygen, and prevent further contamination. So you don't want to go rub it in the dirt. Rub it in the dirt, get stop bleeding. Don't do that. Bandage dressings in place after bleeding is controlled. So don't put your 4x4 on there and just start bandaging. If it's really bad bleed, you may not have the bleed stop. You want to make sure it's stopped and then put your bandage on.
There's rocks and stuff in it. Can we flush those?
You can take sterile water and dump sterile water over it, try to get it out. If you see a rock there, yes, I would get the rock out. Yeah.
I know that other things that are like in there, penetrated in there.
Yeah.
You have to leave those.
Yeah, like a piece of rebar going through the arm. You don't want to pull the rebar out. But yeah, if it's something like a rock or something like that, yeah, go ahead and you could get your 4x4s. A lot of times what we'll do is we'll wet some 4x4s and we'll kind of just scrub what we can out. Because yeah, you don't want to leave those rocks in there. Once we get it out, then we'll go ahead and bandage it up. So.
And you put that part in your papers.
What's that?
The rock.
Yeah.
Put it in your papers?
Yeah. You're right in your-
Oh, yeah, you could say wound was debrided of rock, or however you want to word that. Yeah, you definitely can. So, it's there's some things I'm very detailed on, but wound care I'm really not. 4x4 plates, bleeding controlled 4x4 plates. Because I'll tell you what that's going to happen when you get to the hospital. Take it off there and look at it. They're going to clean it. So it's not it's not something that they could really come back on us on anyway. The more complete you are with your chart, though, the better off you are. So treating specific types of open wounds. Treating abrasions and lacerations, reduce wound contamination, hold direct pressure to control bleeding, always check pulse, motor, and sensory function visible to injury to assure function. Whenever I went through basic class, and they don't do this a whole lot anymore, I'm not sure why, but every time we did something, let's say like we splinted an arm, before we splinted the arm, we wanted to check for pulse, motor, and sensation. Then we check again afterwards. The reason is because if you don't check before and you put the splint on and then they don't have pulse, motor, sensation, you have no proof that they had it before. You may have caused that damage. So we always check before. It's okay, got a pulse, can you look at your fingers yet? Okay, can you feel it? Great. Put the splint on or whatever, stop the bleeding, put the splint on, okay, look at your fingers, awesome. Oh, still have a pulse, okay, what finger am I holding? And right there, you just did it. I mean, it doesn't take but a second to do it. And then you can document that pulse, motor, sensation was checked before and after splinting. Easy peasy. They called it all kinds of things, from pulse, motor, sensation. They used to call it abbreviated form, every chart, PMS, intact. And I thought, what? Oh, okay, pulse, motor, sensation. We called it neuros intact. Pulse present, neuros intact is all we would say. So whatever it is you say, as long as it's appropriate to what you're doing. Use caution as objects may be embedded deeper than they appear. Check for exit wounds. May require immediate care. Bullets can fracture bones as they enter. Stab wounds are considered serious if in a vital area of the body. So in the state of Oklahoma, it's I know it's head, neck, and torso. Automatically makes them a level 1 trauma. Reason is because head, neck, and torso have a. But I want to say that it's also your upper half of your extremities too. But I'd have to look in the trauma transport and triage guideline. Out here, stab wounds like that are going to OU from us anyway. So it's really not important whether I remember if it's in the thigh, is it or isn't it? Because they're going to go. But definitely chest, head, neck. Yeah, that's the only obvious, right? Bullets can fracture bones as they enter and exit. I actually had a guy that tried to rob a crack house with a pistol, and they had an AK-47, so they won. And whenever he was running, him and there was 3 of them that went in there to do this, and the guys come out with an AK-47 out of the back, and so they take off running down the road, and he shoots one through the stomach, he shoots the other one through the leg, and he shoots the other one in the butt. And the one that got shot in the stomach, they took POV. Somebody loaded him up and took him. I get the guy that shot in the leg and the girl that shot in the butt. The butt was basically through. She was fine. There was not really any fracture. But the guy that got shot in the leg or through the femur, it had blown his femur out, and there were chunks of his femur in his pants. It's pretty impressive. So he had a really bad rope leg. With bone chunks in his pants. Reassure patient, search for exit wound, so treating penetrating trauma. Assess the need for basic life support, follow local protocols regarding spinal mobilization, and then transport patient. A lot of your services nationwide are getting away from using spine boards. So now if it's a stab through the neck and you're worried that it's gone through through the you caused an actual not neck injury. I was going to use a correct term for it, but I can't think enough. Anyway, if you're worried about them losing sensation stuff because of a neck injury, go ahead and use a C-collar. Yes, you can. Let's say that we use it. Yeah, exactly. That's what I was getting ready to say. If you don't have a knife sticking out, there's other ways around it. In this business, you guys are going to have to learn to improvise. Just because patient XYZ requires an X collar or a C collar, whatever you want to call it, doesn't mean that XYZ is always going to get one, because sometimes you can't. You have a knife sticking out of the neck. Can you really put a C collar on that? No. But what you can do is you could stabilize as well as you can, and I'd probably use a spine board on this patient just to move them, make them move them a lot easier. But you can then take some thick padding, gauze, whatever, go around the knife, so you have the knife stabilized, and then you could, in the best you can use something like these head blocks here to stabilize the head so it doesn't move around. The last thing you want is that head moving around as we're going on the road, that knife sticking in the neck. Just what. And we have medical duct tape, which is a roll of white duct tape. Actually, the stuff we have is pretty good. Some of it's not, but that white stuff we have is really good. So that guy, it's like, waking up in the morning and somebody shoots him in the back. He really made his girlfriend mad. Didn't get her flowers for her birthday or something. I don't know. And so then he gets shot in the back. Bullet travel is, in fact, unpredictable. So don't. Couple things. Don't ever. You're not always going to find it straight in line. But don't ever call an entrance and exit wound in your chart. Don't say I had an entrance wound on the whatever part of the chest and an exit wound in the back, because the first thing that's going to happen is a lawyer is going to ask you where you got your ballistics training, and I'm not giving you ballistics training. I don't. And you noted a bullet hole or a hole in the chest and a hole in the back. Hole in the chest is approximately 8 centimeters, and the one in the back is 12 centimeters. I actually had a guy that when he shot himself in the head, just a little hole in the side of the head, but on the other side of it was a very large exit wound. He was still alive. He was still alive. Well, I mean, his body wasn't dead yet. It was weird. He was moving like he was trying to get comfortable to die, but there's a ping pong size of brain matter herniating out of the entrance wound. I'll call it. It was an entrance wound. in a softball size of brain matter herniate out of the exit wound. But what had happened is where he shot himself, it allowed enough of the pressure so that it never pressed in the brainstem. So what happens when a lot of times is if they don't hit the brainstem, once the pressure builds up, they'll push on the brainstem and shut everything off. Well, that one, it was
It's a big old hole.
yeah, it's
Built
herniating
pressure.
out of that hole. He shot himself 40, and he's laying there on the ground, like moving like he's getting comfortable. Like, oh man, this is insane. So, yeah, we just sat there and waited for him to die. So, that guy got shot. Looks like what would you be considered, or what would you be concerned about with this guy right here? Okay. What else could you be concerned about?
Well, that's right, where your gallbladder, your liver, and your spleen, and your
Yeah.
colon, and
So-
all that's right there.
So depends on where he was in his when he's was he taking a breath in? So everything's up, including the liver, or when he's exhaling, everything's down. So it's a long shot. Either way, it's a bad deal for this dude, right?
Something got hit.
Something, yeah,
Something
exactly.
got it.
We don't know. We don't know.
We can't call it.
That'd be a pretty good sized entrance wound. Where they got an elephant gun they're shooting with. And if he's a banger, which he may be or not, he may just, once again, maybe he was just didn't buy his girlfriend flowers that day. But look, he may have got shot in the back.
Looking at him right there,
It's supposed to be the same shot as your other pictures that you just had.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. you should read that.
Well, it doesn't tell me that.
Okay.
So well, he was shot kind of towards the back. It's not. I guess that's in the back, isn't it? Well, it's not the same guy. Look, this is a white dude.
That is clearly not white dude.
This is clearly not a white dude.
on that picture right there, is that just blood all over him, or is he
Yes.
already? To see the different colors from his neck down,
Yeah, this is
this weird blood.
Yeah, he bled a lot and got moved around a lot.
Well, I see his underwear, but to have, I mean, I understand you get blood everywhere, but when this looks like it's
I
smeared
should
on him,
have left the spine boards with blood on just to let you see because
I mean,
it gets blood gets everywhere and then it starts to smell like iron. So anyway, do not remove objects may cause severe bleeding. Obviously, right? This is treating impaled object. Exposed wound area. Control profuse bleeding by direct pressure. Apply several layers of bulky dressing so dressing surrounds the object on all sides. Secure dressing in place. So we have what we call multi-trauma dressings, which are basically big bulky dressings. You take those and you surround the object the best you can to stabilize it the best you can. Trust me, nobody's going to grade you on that unless you accidentally pull it out or push it in further. So. Treating impaled object, care for shock, keep patient at rest, provide rapid transport. Reassess patient throughout all aspects of care. I don't like reassure. We're doing the best we can, or we're going to take care of you, but telling them that everything's going to be okay, it's not really always. So there they are. They're putting some bulky dressings on around it. What they'll end up doing there, they get done, is putting like a light kind of tape around it to hold it in place, or like that one did. That's some Curlex, so, or cleaning, or whatever you want to call it. What's that? So yeah, except for the vet wrap doesn't. The vet wrap sticks on itself. This what they're using don't. I like I think it's Curlex is what the vet wrap is, and it's a kind of sticky wrap on itself. I really like that a lot better than this, but that's cheaper. That stuff. So, object impaled in cheek. Take care that the object does not enter oral. What? Take care that the object does not enter oral cavity. How it's already in the oral cavity, causing airway obstruction. If cheek wall is perforated, profuse bleeding into mouth and throat can cause nausea and vomiting. External wound care will not stop the flow of blood into the mouth. So, examine wound site, both sides and outside mouth. If you find the perforation and can see both ends, remove the object. Okay. If this cannot be easily done, leave the object in place. This is on the cheek. This is because you could have an airway compromise. It's the only reason that you're going to remove it. Yeah, because you could have an airway compromise.
It's driving me nuts. I can't focus too long. Explain those fingers to me,
It's a degloving.
because that's the thumb.
Yeah, came completely off.
Yeah.
It's probably this finger, right? But you have it, and it could be a fracture. It could be coming over, so it could be this finger came over. But man, that's a
Really
big one.
took it off.
Yes, it is the good pictures. Even if I got up there with no legs.
Yeah, is that a blast injury, an IED? Did you step on an IED?
This is amputated leg.
And your thumb amputated.
That B picture, the team roper got his fingers and thumb cut off. Then there's a guy with a knife in his back.
Yeah, this one got a knife and it's down it. Okay.
Well, there's the knife right there.
That looks like some pretty bad.
Fancy little hooks on it.
blood and
That's what
paint
hurt.
on.
I'm just trying to decide the heck happened to that dude.
Oh, because that one's the crush.
Yeah.
What are you looking at, the amputated leg?
Yeah.
The open crush wound? Oh, wait, no. If it's an amputation, it doesn't say what happened.
So in the nursing home, when you're playing crossword puzzles, don't lip off because somebody will stab you in the face with their pencil. Yeah, stab. Object impaled in cheek. Position patient to allow for drainage. Monitor patient's airway. Dress outside of wound. Provide oxygen and care for shock. Remember, we're only removing it if we're worried about an airway compromise, right? Puncture wound or object impaled in eye. Stabilize the object. Apply rigid protection. Have another rescue stabilize dressing and cut while you secure them in place with a self-adherent roller bandage or with wrapping of gauze. So they're wanting you to hold it or secure it while it's being wrapped. That way it doesn't get moved a lot for obvious reasons. That would suck.
That was, yeah, bad.
They're going to cover it with a cup to keep it from getting hit or moving. Something that you'll want to do, I'm not sure if they're going to tell you this in here, you'll need to go ahead and cover the other eye up too.
It shows it.
Yeah. Here's the deal.
Like you're looking.
If you don't and they look at something, they're going to move that other eye and cause more damage. So.
When my brother, my oldest brother, was 17, he was building camps for my dad on the ranch. And there were big schools of Wicked Fish Bar, that little bitty one. Big schools, you're not real careful when you cut it, it's in the school.
Uh-huh.
It went right into the eyeball.
Oh,
Right
man.
in his feet. He sent it to the picture, and he was like 2 miles from the house. And he just grabbed a fence wire, cut the wire off, and drove himself to the house. And my stepmom,
So can you see out of that eye?
he sees, not really shadows, because he can see it, but it does this all the time. That's what he says, this is what I see. I look at you and this is what you're doing.
Oh, man, that would be terrible.
Yeah, but he ended up driving himself all the way to the hospital, because my stepmom passed out when she seen it. He went to her and he said, hey, I think I got something in my eye, and he doesn't have it, she seen that wire, and he passed out. So he drove himself to the hospital.
There's a little something in your eye.
Wow. So, puncture wound or object impaled in eye, dress and bandage uninjured eye. Consider need for oxygen and care for shock. Reassure patient and provide emotional support. Most likely, I'm just going to tell you guys, most likely this patient doesn't need oxygen. You can do it if it helps comfort them, but it's an injury to the eye. It's not, you're not losing blood. Treating avulsions.
Please, I can't breathe.
Clean wound surface. Fold skin back into normal position. Control bleeding and dress with bulky dressing. If the bull's parts are completely torn away, save and sterile dressing and keep moist with sterile saline. They might be able to use that as a skin graft whenever they reattach it. I'll tell you what, I've done my best at saving fingers and toes out here to no avail. Oh, you get some and they throw them away. They don't even try to reattach them. Yeah, so I always thought they would try, but they don't. I guess they don't think it's worth their time. So we had a toe that it was nice, clean cut, big toe too. It wasn't like his little toe. It was balanced.
You kind of need your big toe.
Yeah, and nope, they threw it away. Treating amputations, take steps to control hemorrhage immediately. I'll tell you this, a lot of your amputations don't bleed. Cuts it off, the arteries retract back up into the skin, tamponades it off. There's not a lot of bleed. I don't know that I've ever seen an amputation that bled a lot. So if there is a lot of blood, take steps to control the hemorrhage immediately. Apply direct pressure to control bleeding. Use tourniquet only if all other methods fail. Oh, there it is, right there. That's how our toe looked. I would bag it a little bit differently than that. Wrap it up in your gauze with your moist gauze. Put it in that bag and then put it in the ice. Don't put it directly in the ice like this because you don't want that on ice. You just want to keep it cool.
That's what it tells you in the book, and then they show you a picture like that.
Well,
Yeah.
It's laying on the gauze.
Yeah, but you're not going to be able to keep it on that gauze if you're transporting it.
Well, maybe they just wanted to show you where to place it.
Yeah, it could be.
Instead
I'd
of
have it-
having
I'd-
a ball of gauze there.
I would have it in another bag though. So.
Like that, wouldn't it dry out?
With moist gauze. You want moist gauze.
Right. But
So you want to wrap it in gauze, put it in a bag, then put it in a bag of ice.
Yeah. And then they'll tell you whenever you get to OU that you did it all wrong. Just telling you. No matter what you do, no matter what standard you follow, and I think
So they just want to throw it in the trash.
yeah, I think Ellen could attest to this for me that we did it exactly like you're supposed to, and they said something stupid like, if it would have been in a paper bag, we could have saved it. What? So, anyway, wrap amputated part in sterile dressing and secure dressing with self-adhesive gauze bandage. Then wrap or bag amputated part in plastic bag. Keep it cool by cold pack. Do not immerse amputated part directly in water or saline. All right? Or ice. Treating genital injuries. Control bleeding. Preserve divulged parts. Yes, please. Consider if injury suggests another possible more serious injury, like a knife in the back. Display calm, professional manner, dress and bandage wound, and consider possibility of sexual assault. Well, that was real short on that, wasn't it?
Lorena Boyd.
I know, right? That would be terrible. Burns. I don't know what they're gonna tell you in here, but I'm gonna tell you on burns. This is a pet peeve of mine. I've run some pretty bad burns. If you're not sweating in the back of the ambulance, it's not warm enough. I'll just tell you that. Your comfort becomes not very
My
important.
partner's not passed out. I can take it pretty warm. Before I sweat.
Yeah, so may involve more than just skin level structures. If respiratory structures are affected, swelling may occur, causing life-threatening obstruction. Do not let burn distract from spinal damage or fractures. I would say the other way around. On your fractures aren't really that important. Now, a femur fracture, something might be, but depending on how bad the burn is. Your burns lose ability to thermoregulate, and so you can put them in shock pretty quick. Classifying burns, agent and source, depth and severity. So your agent and source was it a fire that burned? It was a chemical burn? Was it an electrical burn? And then depth. Whenever we're talking about depth, we're talking about first degree, second degree, in full thickness or third degree. Or you can have partial thickness, superficial partial thickness, and full thickness burn. The severity is how much of the body burns. So even though it's a third degree burn, if it's just third degree burn in the back of the hand, it's a lot less severe than an entire arm that's, second and third degree burn. Classify burns by agent and source, such as chemicals or electricity. Report the agent and, when practical, the source of the agent. Never assume the agent or source of the burn. Always gather information from your observations of the scene, bystanders reports, and patient's interview. Here they're telling you guys superficial, partial thickness, and full thickness. Your superficial is just reddened skin, typically like sunburns, things like that. Once you start to have the blisters, actual blisters from the burns, not the water blisters, but actual blisters from the burns, you become partial thickness. Partial thickness burns are your most painful burns, because once you have a full thickness burn, you burn all the nerve ends away, and it doesn't really hurt. Typically, charring or a white, waxy, hard feeling, you're dealing with a third degree burn. So superficial burn or first degree burn involves only epidermis reddening with minor swelling. Partial thickness burn, which is a second degree burn, epidermis burn through dermis, epidermis burn through dermis damage. Deep, intense pain, noticeable reddening, and blisters and mottling. Full thickness burn or a third degree burn, all layers of the skin burn, blackened areas surrounded by dry and white patches. Typically not painful. Or at least the large area of the burn is not painful. Obviously you're going to have some second degree surrounding it. So there's a sunburn or a superficial burn. That's a bro that was at the pool too long right there. Here's your partial thickness burn. Notice the blistering. Notice it's not your water blisters, it's actual blistering from the burn itself. A lot of people, whenever they get a sunburn and 2 days later it starts to blister, it's not second degree, that's just, that's the water blistering. Yes, it's going to break. This is actually blistering from the burn. There's another blistering from the burn, from partial thickness. Youch. And there's a full thickness. Notice you have the black charring, the white waxy area around it. This guy is still alive. It appears they're protecting his identity. I'm surprised he's not intubated. I'm really surprised he's not intubated. Ouch.
What do you think happened?
I don't know what to say. I don't know. I had one that was a lot of second, didn't have a lot of third degree, but the severity, how much she was burned, was significant because it was her entire front of her body. And it had a hot water heater blow up on her. So. Consider the following factors: agent and source of burn, determining the severity. Body regions burned, depth of the burn, extent of the burn, age of the patient, and other illness and injury. So there's a formula out there that is age plus burn surface area equals mortality rate. And, obviously it's just a kind of a gauge. So let's say that they're 90% burnt and they're 20 years old. They're 110% chance of dying, right? So it's a mortal wound. So it's not exactly like that, but that's something that they kind of look at to kind of gauge what the chances are. They're not going to tell you that on here. They will have you guys do need to know your rules of nines. There's some things I want to tell you about rules of nines. Helps estimate extent of burn area. Adult body is divided to 11 main areas. Each represents 9% of body surface. Guys, you'll see pictures of the entire front torso as 18%. You'll get test questions that tell you that the chest is burnt. That is 9%, okay? The chest is 9%, the abdomen is 9%, for a total torso of 18%. Make sense? So the front of the chest is 18, or the front torso is 18%, back torso is 18%. But if they tell you that the chest is burnt, that's only 9%. If they tell you the torso is burnt, that's 18%. I'm glad they have this picture on there. In the EMR test, how they did it is they just showed the EMRs a picture without that line in the middle and an 18 on the chest. And I had a huge problem with that because then in the testing, they're all counting that entire torso as they're counting just the chest as 18%, and so they're overestimating Rule 9. There's another one that is used, and it's the Palmer method. And basically, the palm of the patient's body is approximately 1% burn surface area. So, take their hand and start laying it all over their chest. No, that'd get kind of old. But. Yeah. So here, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh! So, if you'll notice, the adult head's 9%. The child and infant head is 18%. They have a bigger head to body ratio. The legs are only 7% on the front, 7% on the back of the kid. They were 14% for the leg on the baby. So you will
That's
want.
still the same, because the baby on the infant, they just have 14% for the whole.
It still would be the same, but whenever you're talking, if you have the majority of the leg burnt on, it's easy. I guess what I'm trying to say, it's easier to divide it out in the kid because they're a longer, bigger leg versus the baby, shorter leg. Most likely, if it's burnt, it's going to be 14%. 1% is the genitalia region. So no matter what they tell you, it's 1%. So, you will want to get to know the rule of 9. All right. It is, you guys will, not only will you see it on your test for soft tissue injuries, you also see it on National Registry. You will get a Rule 9 question on National Registry. But you'll also want it in your career for your career, so you can estimate total burn surface.
I thought that was interesting.
The Rule 9.
Yeah. Hey, I'll work all weekend long because I mean I'm going to be going.
Classifying burns by severity must be classified to determine order and type of care, order of transport, and maximum information to provide to the emergency department. Geriatric note: a moderate burn in a young adult can be fatal to a geriatric adult. Pediatrics: infants and children have a much greater relationship of body surface area to total body size, resulting in greater fluid and heat loss from burned skin. Treating specific burn types: patient care for thermal burn. Stop the burning process in cool burned areas. You want to stop the burning process on upper body. Ensure open airway and assess for breathing. I'm not sure where we're going to go in this, but if you see singed nose hairs, charring in the mouth or around the mouth, or hoarseness to the voice, or for any reason suspect an airway burn, get ALS there as fast as you can. Preferably Airvac because they have paralytic drugs to intubate, and they'll need to be intubated. Look for signs of airway injury, complete primary assessment, and treat for shock. Patient care for thermal burns: evaluate burns by depth, extent, and severity. Do not clear debris. Remove clothing and jewelry. Why remove clothing and jewelry? Why jewelry? You swell. Yeah, it gets really hard to get them things off. Wrap with dry sterile dressings for burns to hands, feet. Remove patient's rings or jewelry, and separate fingers and toes with sterile gauze pads. Patient care for chemical burn. Wash away chemical with copious amounts of flowing water. If dry chemical, brush away, then flush the water. Once again, would most likely cause would most likely go to a rig for chemical burn and get a hold of the MSDS. Now we do have a lot of agriculture out here, and even though there's some really good farmers who have a very nice and tidy barn, everything's in order and in place. I've seen some barns that aren't so nice and tidy and everything in place. There she is, brushing away the dry powder. Then flood the area with water, blah, blah, blah. Patient care for chemical burns, remove contaminated clothing, apply sterile dressing, treat for shock and transport. We used to take moist dressings and put on burns to keep it cool and stop the burning process. We'll only do that, and I believe it's under 10% now. If it's a greater than 10%, you are just doing dry dressings. All right. They're saying apply sterile dressings. Yeah, good luck with that. Ooh. Not too long ago, Burns went to, I'm just looking at my ceiling here. Not too long ago, Burns went to just a clean dressing. It didn't need to be sterile. So, almost looks like there was a wall right there. What is that? It's just a bad mud job. Explode. What's that? Yeah. She heard you say dog. Exposure to high levels of radio. See, she's like, somebody wants me? She loves to be told to just go lay down. So, exposure to high levels of radiation can harm the human body both immediately and in a delayed fashion. Great number of sources of radiation difficult to detect without specific monitoring equipment. She take it. A lot of times she won't eat stuff like that. Yeah, she? You're a bad influence. All right. Do not approach a radiological injury without protective equipment and specialized training. So, stay away. See patient with radiological burns only after they have been decontaminated. Most will present like thermal injury. So what are we doing? How are we going and saving people with radiological burns? We're staying away. We're going to stay far, far away. We're going to have somebody decontaminate them, and once they're clean, then they're going to bring them to us. We're going to treat them like a thermal burn. Electrical injuries, severe damage through body by disrupting nerve pathways. Entry and exit burns are possible. Respiratory cardiac arrests are possible. Bones may fracture from violent muscle contraction. And these patients need to go somewhere to be monitored. They need to have their heart watched because they can, the electricity could have damaged the pathways in the heart, and it could be it could be up to 24 or even longer hours before they have any problems. Provide airway and breathing care. Provide basic cardiac life support. Be ready to defibrillate. Care for shock and administer high concentration oxygen. Care for spinal and head injuries as well as extremity fractures. Evaluate burn sites, cool burning areas, and smoldering clothing, the same you would for a flame burn. Apply sterile dressing. Transport as soon as possible. Nala, go lay down. Nala, go lay down. Lay down. Let's see what this animation does.
As electrical current passes through the body, the resistance to current flow from tissue, such as bone, results in the production heat. This heat is transferred to the surrounding tissues, and extensive thermal injury can occur without significant external signs. In addition, injury to the heart's electrical conduction system is common, and lethal cardiac dysrhythmia possible.
I had two friends that were rabbit hunting.
Uh-huh.
You know, the old irrigation pipe. Swept it up, cut the high line,
Oh, yeah.
killed the little brother.
Oh, wow.
Because big brother, he was getting shocked. Big brother tried to knock him off. It killed the little brother, and he had electricity that went through him, and it shot out his hands, and his feet, between his toes. And somewhere else. He lived, though. He had been told something. He lived.
Yeah, that's not a good deal. Dressing and bandaging. You guys need to go smoke or anything?
If they go smoke, I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna rest of
Okay, that's fine.
well, I'm gonna, yeah.
That was pretty good.
Well, I'll go over and watch a little baseball.
I'm missing a couple of days for that. Are you?
I'm gonna miss Tuesday. I don't think unless he has class, I hope I'd be done by then, we're gonna have band concert. I can't miss the band concert. Plus this is the end of the school. Hopefully. This is at 7. I guess I can come for a little bit and go and then go. What are we gonna do Saturday with our lab?
We'll just hammer on through.
Oh, we're gonna do class?
Yeah. Always till class is done. Once class is done, then we'll start doing my.
Tuesday, I guess I'll show up for a little bit and I'll have to leave. We got band concert. All this end of the school crap that's fixing to happen. You won't even remember, I don't know why I tell you.
You leaving?
Yeah, I might have to hang for a little bit.
No, you're fine. You go.
I'm like, you're just going over the chapters, right? And then Saturday, we're just going over the chapters.
Roar!
put the fidget spinner up there for you.
She leave?
Yeah.
She couldn't take any more pictures?
She would have stayed, but she was only here for a minute anyway. To start with. Our little son had a baseball game tonight that was canceled. And they found another game to play tomorrow, but it's still not going to be tomorrow. So I had to find somebody to take them to the game for me. I didn't think it was fair, but I had to find somebody to watch her in a baseball game as well. So. You don't have to do that. I need details on the shredded guy. How often did you show up? How much did you charge?
Oh, I don't know. I don't think it's bad. Jacqueline does it. I think he does it once a month. I think it depends on how many things you do.
So you don't like do a contract for if you got a guarantee that you'll pay him this many times.
No, I don't know.
Got some new boots today. I gotta try this brand before I look around up and see. I ain't gonna try this brand before I look around up and see. Yeah. That was a different one. Yeah. It used to be. Another one's working.
I was expecting one more to come back, and then I was like, oh yeah, she's gone. So, dressing and bandages. Dressing any material applied to a wound to control bleeding and prevent contamination. Bandage, any material used to hold dressing in place. So, I'm pretty sure you'll want to keep those straight. You taking the test yet? So you will want to keep those straight?
Yeah.
You will, in fact, want to keep those straight. Really not fair that you had to tell everybody that. So, yeah, I know. Dressings cover wounds, so they dress the wound just however you want to, like you dress your body or however you want to remember that, right? So, universal dressing available for profuse bleeding, large wound. We use trauma multi-dressing. Pressure dressing used to control bleeding. They have different kinds. You'll hear people talk about the Israeli pressure bandage and different things like that. Basically, what it boils down to is it is some sort of bandaging with maybe something that you actually put pressure on. So the Israeli bandage is basically two soft rolls that go around the wound. As you wrap it, it's able to put pressure around that to keep it from bleeding. So it actually puts pressure on that wound. Occlusive dressing used to form an airtight seal. Wounds to the abdomen, large neck veins, and open wounds to the chest. We use it's called Vaseline gauze for our occlusive dressings, but they have all kinds of different occlusive dressings like ash and chest seals and things like that. Basically, like it says, it keeps an airtight seal. You can also use things like Saran wrap. There's a bandage going over a dressing. So dressing open wounds, take standard precautions, expose wound, use sterile or very clean materials, cover entire wound, control bleeding by direct pressure and or hemostatic agents or dressings to stop slow bleeding. Do not remove dressing. Direct pressure and or hemostatic agents or dressings. Basically, your steps are going to go like this, and I believe we talked about them in the last class, right? You're going to apply pressure or what bandage and apply pressure, or the dressing, sorry. Apply the dressing, hold pressure. If it stops, that's where you stop and put your bandaging on. If not, you're going to try the dressing. That doesn't work, elevate. Doesn't work, go to your tourniquet. If that doesn't work, you're going to use a hemostatic agent. If you have a open wound to the chest, let's say like let's stop what I'm getting ready to say. Let's use a different area, somewhere that is not an extremity where you could apply a tourniquet. You could use a hemostatic agent on that, a hemostatic dressing. The reason I stopped on applying a hemostatic dressing to the chest is because if it's an open chest wound or a sucking chest wound, you'll want to be able to identify that. So if whenever they breathe, there's bubbles coming out or something like that, you don't want to use that occlusive dressing on that. Sorry, the hemostatic agent. You do want to use an occlusive dressing. So you want to put that occlusive dressing on, tape it on all, but leave one side untaped so that it can. Once the pressure builds back up in there, it can burp itself, and so the lungs could keep expanding. So I hope I just butchered that really bad for you guys. So bandaging open wounds. Do not bandage too tightly or too loosely. Do not leave loose ends. Do not cover tips of fingers or toes. Must observe distal skin color changes and cover all edges of dressing. So you don't want to leave your 4x4 or whatever hanging out. You want to cover it with your bandaging. So there's applying a roller bandage. We'll do this once we get to the lab stuff. We'll apply some dressing. Oh, hey, chapter review. Soft tissue injuries may be closed, internal with no pathway to the outside, or open, an injury in which the skin is interrupted, exposing the tissue below. Closed injuries include contusions, bruises, hematomas, crush injuries, and blast injuries. Open wounds include abrasions, lacerations, punctures, avulsions, amputations, crush injuries, and blast injuries. I would say that with the blast injury, yeah, it could be both. It could cause both to close or to open. For open wounds, expose the wound, control bleeding, and prevent further contamination. For both open and closed injuries, take appropriate standard precautions. Note the mechanism of injury. Protect the patient's airway and breathing. Consider the need for oxygen by non-rebreather mask. Treat for shock and transport. Burn severity is determined by considering the source of the burn. Body regions burned, depth of the burn, superficial, partial thickness, and full thickness. Extent of the burn by rule of nines or rule of palm. Age of the patient. Children under 5 and adults over 55 react most severely. And other patient illness or injuries. Care for burns includes stopping the burning process, using water for a thermal burn, brushing away dry chemicals, covering the thermal burn with a dry sterile dressing, flushing a chemical burn with sterile water, protecting the airway, administering oxygen, treating for shock, and transporting the patient to a medical facility. I shouldn't make that long and drawn out. For treatment of electrical injuries, be sure that you and the patient are in a safe zone away from possible contact with electrical sources. Protect airway, breathing, and circulation. Be prepared to care for respiratory or cardiac arrest. Treat for shock, care for burns, and transport. And this is a good one where scene safety, it's important that you practice scene safety on that, especially when you're dealing with power lines. They can and will kill you. So. The soft tissue of the body is made up of skin, fatty tissue, muscles, blood, vessels, fibrous tissues, membranes, glands, and nerves. The skin provides protection, water balance, temperature regulation, excretion. Got a piece of beef jerky that I stole from you. Come loose. And shock absorption. No, just it was like, I don't know if it's like back here in my cheek or whatever, but I was talking and it worked its way down.
I've had 2 pieces of that day and it was hot.
Really?
It was hot in the morning. Yeah, they ain't supposed to do it.
Got a good batch. Open or closed. So remember, open or closed in reference to a soft tissue injury is dictated by whether or not the skin is still intact. Closed injuries must be evaluated with consideration to underlying anatomy and mechanism of injury. Open injuries typically are easier to visualize, but they often can mask underlying injuries. Burns involve immediate destruction of tissue, but also can have long-term effects, both physically and emotionally. Safety must be a key concern when treating a patient with a burn or an electrical issue. The goal of dressing and bandaging wounds is to control bleeding and to prevent infection. So, questions to consider. Does the patient have a patent airway and breathing? Is breathing adequate? That's always an important thing to ask whenever you're treating patients, right? If the wound is penetrating, is there an exit wound? What is the best way to immobilize an impaled object? Usually, bulky dressing around it if you can. Sometimes it's going to be hard to figure it out, and that's why I say you got to improvise in this job. So, is there a respiratory involvement with the burn? If there is, please call for ALS. Have we irrigated the chemical burn sufficiently? Chances are, if you're just using R-sterile water and ambulance, no, you need to find a source of water to flood it. Does electrical burn have an exit wound? Typically, you'll find the exit wounds on a grounding source. So if they were, I'll use for instance, I had a guy that was up on an irrigation system, and his grounding source, he was leaning on the main pipe with his head, and then his feet, and then his arm hits the 30,000 volts of electricity, and so you have a grounding source to the head and his feet. Believe it or not, he's fine. He got blown off of the irrigation system, and so really it's just that initial punch. I went ahead and flew in because I was more worried about the long-term effects, because you did have burns to his feet, and you did have some red marks to, redness to his head. So I was worried about the long-term effects or the possible cardiac effects from it. But
on the chemical deal, so we don't have a water source. Once we leave it from that spot in the ambulance, we can't stop anywhere else, correct?
yeah, and you got
We can't go
some.
from here to the hospital because there's a water hydrant. Hopefully, you have to go farther than that, but
That's a tricky question, because the problem is you just contaminated your whole ambulance if you load that patient without deconning. The better question is, how do we decon him out there, or decon the patient out there? Can we get can we get a fire department with some water? Now, obviously, they're not going to take their 2.5-inch hose and blast him off, right? But we don't have any skin anymore, so he should be good. But that's it's a good question, because they're it's that you're always trying to the perfect world. Oh, there's going to be a hydrant right there, but sometimes there's just not.
right.
And so, and you don't want to contaminate your entire ambulance, which happens. Now you have to decon your ambulance. Sometimes that's the best answer. It's some sort of, let's say, organophosphate, or some sort of fertilizer type contamination that in large quantities, yes, it's a bad deal, but once you're removing from that immediate area, it's still contaminated per se, but it's not a dangerous situation. told you guys about that code I ran where that guy huffed a malathion. As we ran the code, it came out of his pores and everything. By the time we got to the hospital, the ambulance reached. I don't think there was a way we could decon him because it wasn't external. It was, internal. Got so bad that they shut down the ER on that guy and decon the ER because it just kept coming. I mean, it was. I noticed it had an odor in the back of the ambulance, but my understanding was that the ER they actually the eye started watering, the salivation lacrimation, and all that, where they start having the watery eyes and the runny mouth and everything, and so they shut it down because it's morphine and phosphate, and obviously a lot of it. But so the question would have been, would there have been a good way for me to decon him? Well, there wasn't out there. I didn't really know that he was contaminated to the extent that he was, where I may have had to try to think of a different way. But, all in all, at the end of the day, got to the hospital, I was fine. The ER people didn't seem to take it too well. So it's just, that's another thing, I could teach you about these things, but until the situation comes, that becomes you and your partner's discussion. Hey, he's contaminated, what do we do? Well, let's get the fire department out here. Or, we have the sterile water here, we'll rinse them off with what we have. It's just maybe ammonia anhydrous or something that, really once you're removing from that blast out of it, you can dump water on it and it loves water. And dump water on it and maybe, get him to where you're comfortable putting him in there. Yeah.
He's not in my ambulance.
True. A 20-year-old male lacerated his anterior elbow when he fell through a window. There's a lot of blood around the patient. Bystanders have applied numerous towels and washcloths over the wound, at least 3 inches thick. There are so many dressings on the wound that you can't tell if it is still bleeding. The patient is alert but pale and anxious. The rapid pulse on his uninjured arm is weak and rapid. Of course it is, because you said, the radial, sorry. How much assessment of the wound should you do, and how do you do it without making things worse? I'll tell you what, I don't know if it's the correct answer, but I'll tell you what I'm going to do in this patient. I'm going to leave it. If it starts leaking out, leaking through, okay. Maybe if I take some layers down to where it is, where I do notice some blood coming through. Yeah. Because 3 inches is quite thick. Because by the time he soaks up 3 inches of towels and stuff, he's lost a lot of blood. But if we could take that down to where we see it's not bleeding, cool, we'll roll off. I'm not going to take off all their towels because they could have had a clot there. He's already having trouble. You guys agree? Or maybe he just doesn't handle blood very well. Whenever Jacqueline and I are in college, we were in my room, and and I live in a trailer house, and there's a fly flying around in there, and so I get up from the bed to swat the fly. I swat the fly, and I lost my balance, and I went right through that window, flipped over, landed on my back. I don't know, to this day, I do not know how I did not get cut. I just got up, went around, went in the back door, but whenever I told the landlord what happened, he's like, "Is that really how the window got broke?"
Really?
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, no, I'm serious. I'll pay for it if I need to. But, he paid for it, but I just with the swat the fly and went right through the window. It's fun. I mean, afterwards, pretty dang scary. And it happened because it's that non-tempered glass or whatever.
Yeah.
Shards and everything. So, nope, we're done. So, what's the next chapter?
27, chest wound. Yes, that's not an abdomen.
Is it long?
No, not 10 feet. It didn't look that way.
Let's see how many slides there.
Maybe it's just. Yeah, look, maybe. Yeah, it's not loaded. No, look, it's the next one that's long. It's like. So, is it right here?
Let's see.
71 to 34. 21. Not 71.
There's 27. Let's see if it'll. Oh, I'm so freaking sick of this not working. Oh, this one's gonna do it. Booyaka. Where does that put us on that semester? 57 slides. We get through this. Hi, dog. You guys need to stand up and stretch your legs. Do it. Let's get through this and we'll call it a night. 57 slides. They'll take us 30 minutes maybe.
Yeah.
All right. Chest and abdominal trauma. We already showed you guys videos of the flail chest, right? You remember that video? We could look for some more of those, and I could maybe open chest wounds or sucking chest wounds and things like that on Saturday to start off. I mean, get things started right. Look at bloody, gory pictures. We're getting to the point where we do have a little time to do that if we want to. So I don't want to do it tonight because I want to get through these and go home. But we could do that Saturday. So. Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah. You don't forget again.
Jeez.
It's not her fault. I was on our way over here. I was talking to Amber and I told her, I said, the girls that got their vehicle on Tuesday. I was like, the minute she said Tuesday, you could tell that her whole world was still shit because she realized that she just said Tuesday.
That's funny. So, all right. So chest injuries and abdominal injuries. Yeah. Just got a text message. Just that. Do what? About what? Class? Yeah. We're down to two. Two are going to pass. I think Ellen and Amelia are on there, but I don't know.
I'm there.
See? That's what I said, Ellen. I said Ellen's here.
Hi, Ellen.
Hi.
I'm here.
I miss y'all.
Miss you too. You sound better.
Yep.
All right. So chest injuries and abdominal injuries. Chest injuries. Blunt trauma can fracture ribs, sternum, and costal rib cartilages. Compression occurs when severe blunt trauma causes the chest to rapidly compress. Okay. Penetrating objects. How to think about that. Belts, knives, pieces of metal or glass, steel rods, pipes, sticks, or other objects that would cause a penetrating object or penetrating injury. Can damage internal organs and impair respirations. Looking at a flail chest here, occurs when blunt trauma creates a fracture of 2 or more ribs in 2 or more places. You will want to know the definition of a flail chest. All right, it's when, and think about what a flail chest is, how you identify it. You identify it as a paradoxical chest movement. So as they take a breath out, the chest wall goes out, the fractured section is going to go in. What's about the only way that could happen, that you could see that? If it's broke like that. Now and what I'm trying to say is, let's say that 2 ribs were just broke in one place each. Are you going to get that motion? No, you're going to have a shitload of pain. There's going to be a lot of pain, but the rib cage is pretty much still intact because it has the backside or the other side that's still attached. Let's say that you have one rib that's fractured like that. Are you going to see that paradoxical motion? Probably not, because it's such a small space and the muscles there. You got muscles on top of it, muscles on bottom of it. They're going to carry that. Now you have. Yeah, you would have to be looking hard. But now you have 2 ribs broken in 2 or more places. The definition. So they're going to have a fracture at both sides of that rib, and 2 of them. So now it becomes a large area. That you take a breath in. Now you're going to see that. It has to be the 2 or more places, and then just remember the 2 ribs. Here they're showing the paradoxical motion. So as expiration happens, the flail section moves oppositely. I already explained that. Flail chest, fracture of 2 or more consecutive ribs in 2 or more places. That consecutive is important too. They have to be together. Paradoxical motion. Movement of flail segment is opposite to movement of the remainder of the chest cavities. Mechanism of injury capable of causing injury. Difficulty breathing, hypoxia. Pain at injury site. Likely signs of shock and hypoxia. Chest wall muscle contraction. Mechanism of injury. Patient care, primary assessment for life threats. Administer oxygen. If a patient is breathing inadequately, assist ventilations. All right. Follow local protocol regarding using non-invasive positive pressure ventilation. Monitor patient carefully. Watch respiratory rate and depth. They used to have us put sandbags on these, or weighted, let's say like a sailing bag you could put on there and take it. What that did is it gave a little bit something for that fractured section of the digit, and then it started moving together. But what they found out is a lot of times using that weight actually made it harder for the patient to breathe. So even though that you're making it less painful, you actually compromise the airway by treating like that. Difficulty to tell what is injured from entrance, so open chest injury. Difficult to tell what is injured from entrance wound. Assume all wounds are life-threatening. Open wounds allow air into chest, sets imbalance in pressure, causes lung to collapse. Do they tell you what that collapsed lung is called in here? The collapsed lung is called a pneumothorax. If you allow it to continue, so it continues to build, that pressure continues to build, where you start to collapse the other lung, it becomes a tension pneumothorax. You can also have a hemothorax where that space fills with blood. So, sucking chest wound, chest cavities open to atmosphere, may or may not be a sucking sound, maybe gasping. The patient may be gasping for air. If they have an open wound in the chest, you have an O2 sat that's down, how do you guys think you're going to treat that? I already kind of told you before. How are you going to treat a sucking chest wound? Or if you think it's a sucking chest wound? You didn't miss that class. You weren't paying attention to me 10 minutes ago.
Say it was earlier.
Yeah. So,
talking about having to watch it to see if it was bubbling.
so if you suspect an open chest wound, I'm just messing with you by the way. If you suspect or you suspect that it's an open chest wound, you want to use an occlusive dressing. So that's a dressing that seals all the air out or in. You want to tape it on 3 sides. It'll create recreate that barrier that's there.
So it converts, somebody remember that conversation, right?
That's why you want to tape it on 3 sides, so it's the perfect size.
There's a picture of it. Right here.
So
I think that's
patient care, maintain open airway, seal wound, apply occlusive dressing, administer high concentration oxygen, care for shock, immediate transport. Yes, consider get a ALS on their way. If you have a open chest wound like this, get ALS on their way. With stick needles in their chest and spine. So occlusive and flutter valve dressing involve taping dressing in place and leaving a side or corner of dressing unsealed. As patient inhales, dressing will seal wound. As patient exhales, free corner or edge acts as a flutter valve to release air trapped in chest cavity. See, it's not a video, it's just a picture, but there's a picture of an occlusive dressing taped on or with the corner left open. So on inspiration, dressing seals wound, preventing air injury. So that's what's showing there. They're taking a breath in, comes, hits it. On exhale, it's allowed in the everything goes back normal. It's going to push any air out. So. Exhalation allows trapped air to escape through untapped section of dressing, or untaped section. Rob can't read.
You haven't done anything.
I've been work all day, and that's usually what happens when I go. I've been to work all day, I get tired. Think about it. Does the patient's chest injury need to be treated during primary assessment? Is the airway open and are they breathing adequately? If they're not, yes, it does. If they are, you can move on and then come back to it. Most likely, if they have a sucking chest wound, you're going to have to address it before you move on because they're not going to be breathing adequately. So, does an open chest injury require an occlusive dressing? I'm going to tell you that you're not going to do harm to the patient if you do put an occlusive dressing on the patient. If you don't know whether it's a sucking chest wound or not, and you put an occlusive dressing on them, you're not going to do harm. Matter of fact, I would just tell them, you know, we were worried about a possible sucking chest wound, so we put an occlusive dressing on. Cover your bases just like that. Whereas if you do have a sucking chest wound and you don't put an occlusive dressing on them, they will get worse. So some things to look for. Are they having trouble breathing? Do they have a hole in their chest? Or is their O2 sat down? Or are they becoming cyanotic? If that's the case, there's a good chance that you do need to go ahead and use an occlusive dressing. Does a patient's injury necessitate immediate transport to a trauma center? Yeah. Yeah. Any chest wound, penetrating chest injury like that, yes, it needs to. You don't know what's been hit under it. So does that always save their life? No, it doesn't. I told you guys the story about the kid that got shot in the chest in Wichita, died waiting to go surgery 3 hours later. Yeah, we had him to the hospital in plenty of time. That's on the surgeon, not me. He was alive when I left him, and they let him sit there for 3 hours. So injuries within the chest cavity, pneumothorax, and pneumothorax. Am I reading that right? Pneumothorax and pneumothorax. One of them's capitalized.
That's what I was.
So,
The difference in the book is.
pneumothorax and tension in pneumothorax. That's what I figured it was. So a pneumothorax, a simple pneumothorax is air in the cavity and one lung is one lung is collapsed or partially collapsed. Tension pneumothorax is when one lung is collapsed and the pressure continues to build in the chest and it starts to collapse the other lung. A hemothorax is whenever you have, let's say, blunt injury. There's no open injury, but you maybe a rib is poked and created bleeding. That bleeding goes into that pleural space, and that sac starts to fill up. Well, now that lung can't fully expand, and it starts to collapse. The hemopneumothorax, same thing, but now you have blood and air. Traumatic asphyxia is whenever they're hitting the chest so hard it knocks all the air out, and I believe that they're not breathing right. Probably cardiac arrest. Cardiac tamponade is whenever there's injury to the heart or whatever, and the sac that surrounds the heart starts to fill up with blood or has blood in it. Cardiac tamponade, what you'll start to see is muffled heart tones and narrowing pulse pressure. Something that is absolutely freaking insane is paramedics can do what's called a pericardiocentesis, which basically, if we have a high index of suspicion that they have a cardiac tamponade, we take a big long needle, we put a little electrode on the end of that needle, we go up right underneath the diaphragm with that needle, and we aim it right at the heart until we see a spike on our EKG, that's that little thing is, and then we pull all that fluid out of that sac. So we could drain that sac of that fluid so the heart can then continue to beat normally. I say it's insane because that's pretty intense. I don't know anybody that's done it, but it's a skill that as a paramedic we learn.
Yeah, right.
No, hell no. I haven't.
Yeah,
Most services don't have protocol for it. The only service that I've worked for that I had protocol for it was when I worked Eagle Med, and I guess the nature of the business, I don't even think we had pericardiocentesis that area guy, but the nature of the business with Eagle Med is with the fixed wing, we could end up anywhere and go anywhere. I mean, we're flying all the way across the United States and that thing. It's that was just a little bit different ballgame. Fixed wings is weird. I flew to Tulsa one night from Oklahoma City to pick up a patient that was botched open heart surgery, and we're transporting her with they had the perfusionist with us, and they had the heart lung machine on it, and so this tube that's coming out of her chest, you just touch it, it's warm. Her entire blood volume is flowing through that machine, and so we're loading her into this aircraft, which is hard. But we had a balloon pump and this I guess wouldn't be an LVAD. It was might be an LVAD, left ventricular assist device, because it's pumping the blood. So we had the LVAD and the balloon pump, and we're loading her in, knowing that if we mess up and drop like this LVAD and it's heavy, that it's just going to rip that hose out and her entire blood volume is just going to be right there on the ground. It was very, we got her there, but it was intense. And there was no room. I sat in the corner like this the whole time during the flight. I pushed the button on the monitor to take pressures, and I fell asleep. I was so tired. And those big motors on that King Air. When you're like, so it was fun. And then aortic injury and dissection. Aortic injury and dissection happens a lot of times. You'll go, you hit that steering wheel real hard. The heart basically hangs from a ligament there on the aorta, not do that. And that jolting or that sudden stop with that jolting of the heart sometimes tears that ligament. When it tears that ligament, it creates an aneurysm. It doesn't rupture right away, and so they don't know it. They're normal, they're fine. I've had a patient that's had this, and all of a sudden they're dead, and it's pretty intense. So we had one there in Clinton. stable and everything. I sent him to the Clinton ER. You know, he just had a little cut on his head, a little blood. He's the one that hit the construction workers, the FBI agent that was a child molester. And as soon as they dropped him off and turned around, he coded on him. It happened that fast. I finally ruptured. So pneumothorax and tension pneumothorax. So pneumothorax, when air enters the chest cavity, possibly causing lung collapse. Tension pneumothorax, a type of pneumothorax where air that enters the chest cavity is prevented from escaping. They don't tell you the rest of the story. There's a chest wall injury. There's the lung. The lung is, this is your lung here. This is your, I don't know if it's a parietal pleura or the visceral pleura, but you have your lining of the lung. Air gets in there. Air's trapped in that, between that line, the two linings, and it pushes or collapses that lung because this is pretty high pressure. So about the only way to do that or to fix that is you go ahead and put your occlusive dressing on there. So that whenever they take a breath in, blocks that, and they can let a breath out, comes out, and it burps itself. All right. Or you put an occlusive dressing on it, and you take a needle and you stick it in their chest, in the second clavicular space, mid-clavicular line, and you let all the air out of their chest. No, you can't do that. That's fine. You should be able to. It's cool. Pneumothorax and tension pneumothorax patients typically have diminished or absent lung sounds on affected side. Hemothorax and hemopneumothorax. Hemothorax, chest cavity filled with blood. Hemopneumo is chest cavity filled with blood and air. I already explained all these, didn't I? So there's air for pneumothorax, there's blood for hemothorax, and you're not going to have blood filled up like that. It usually starts down here and it comes up here and then collapses along this way. So you have a big solid on the X-ray, a big solid thing here. It doesn't really look like that. It looks more like their hemopneumo, but a hemopneumo looks like it looks like it kind of looks like this. Also kind of looks like just a regular hemo, but rather than having these borders here, you'll have the blood here, and then the lung kind of fills in that area there versus that open border. Traumatic asphyxia, sudden compression of the chest, forcing blood out of organs and rupturing blood vessels. Neck and face are darker color than the rest of the body. May cause bulging eyes, distended neck veins, broken blood vessels in face. I'm pretty sure this is lethal and they're dead. Cardiac tamponade, direct injury to heart causing blood to flow into the pericardial sac around the heart. Pericardium is a tough sac that rarely leaks. Increased pressure on heart so chambers cannot fill. Cardiac tamponade, bad blood backs into veins. Usually a result of penetrating trauma, distended neck veins, shock, and narrow pulse pressures. Aortic injury and dissection. Aorta is the largest vessel in the body. Penetrating trauma can cause direct damage. Blunt trauma can sever or tear the aorta. Damage can cause high pressure bleeding, often fatal. Patient complains of back and chest, abdomen, or patient complains of pain in chest, abdomen, or back. Signs of shock. Differences in pulse or blood pressure between right and left arms, or differences in pulse between arms and legs or legs themselves. That's if they're symptomatic to it. Commotio cordis, uncommon condition. Trauma to the chest when heart is vulnerable. If untreated, patient will go into ventricular fibrillation. Treat like fib, patient, CPR, and fibrillation. Is this commotio cordis? Is this like when you get hit in the chest with a baseball? Okay.
There's several hundred, I think there's each heartbeat from the heart. And got it right down the middle. And then
Some of them work, some of them don't. Abdominal injuries.
So is that like hitting me with a baseball, kind of almost like in between beats?
Yep. So it causes, so it hits it, I believe it causes almost like a false fire of the heart, which then sends it into ventricular fibrillation. And so then,
Shit down the neck, like,
Yeah.
well, what's going on there?
I believe, read about it, obviously. Don't listen to Rob.
It really don't is because it says that there are several hundred specific damage heartbeat and heart if sufficiently stimulated, we're going to physical fibrillation. The patient experiences this condition, and an example of this is the young athlete who tries to catch a baseball but misses the ball, striking the center of the chest, and the patient collapses in cardiac arrest.
It's back there somewhere, all dusty on a shelf.
You was right on track.
So abdominal injuries can be open or closed. Internal bleeding can be severe if organs or blood vessels are lacerated or ruptured. Serious painful reaction if hollow organs rupture. Evisceration may occur, organs protruding through wound opening. I had a guy that did a self-evisceration one night. A psych patient went down and so I'll give you a little background on Topeka. Topeka was had a lot of psych hospitals, and whenever one of the governmental budget cuts and they shut down all the psychiatric treatments and stuff in the United States, they basically opened their doors and let all the patients out of these Topeka hospitals. So Topeka has a whole bunch of a whole bunch of houses that have like one person living there that's sane, and 4 or 5 people that are not sane. They have some serious mental issues, and but they try to give them a normal living. And so the person's just there to monitor and watch and make sure that they don't hurt themselves or their roommates or whatever. But anyway, so one night this guy gets down and he's going to get a drink of water. He sneaks a knife out of the kitchen, and he goes up to his room, and he spent all night in his room opening himself up. And so he cut, and by the time they find him in the morning, he had an evisceration. I mean, of all his bowels sticking out, and he also perforated a bowel, which some of which he cut it. But it was it was kind of gross. He took a washcloth once he got to the fat layers to wipe all the fat out with the washcloth, and so there's this washcloth that's fat on it, and his guts are just hanging out there. And so I asked him, I was like, were you trying to kill yourself? He's like, yeah. No, I really wasn't. He goes, I just wanted to see if I could do it. I've tried this before, and I didn't get as far as I did this time. Like it ain't no thing, It's like, but to me, I'm like, oh my God. It was yeah. No, he opened it up. He had his intestines hanging out there. So. I imagine that they would have had to do a resection because a lot of that bowel was dried out by the time we got there. I imagine they'd be able to. I don't know. You wonder if he's going to get really seriously infected and never be able to get out of the hospital. We don't get exactly. Probably been using it to blow his nose.
Bash his ass and pick his nose.
Exactly.
And play with his guts all at the same time.
Exactly.
That's what I'm thinking.
So obviously you're first going to take standard precautions. Cover the dressed wound to maintain warmth. Secure covering with tape or cravats tied above and below the position of the exposed organ. If you have exposed bowel, they tell you in there to wet, moist a like 4x4 or whatever to place on the exposed intestines. Do they tell you guys to do that? Okay, so the reason I want you guys to tell me whether it's next class or whatever, whether how they tell you to dress an evisceration. The reason I ask is because it's gone through different periods, just kind of like burn. So at one time with eviscerations, you just put dry dressing on it. Well, the problem is the intestines would then adhere to that dry dressing, and then they had to debride it to get it off. So then they had us doing a moist dressing. Well, the problem with the moist dressing is you're taking body heat, and so I'm just wondering what they're teaching now as far.
Touch. We'll try to replace any, whatever that word is, where exposed organs, apply sterile dressing to moisten
Moisten, there it is.
with sterile filling over one side. Some EMS systems may recommend that you apply the occlusive dressing as well.
So
And re-moisten it.
if it dries out, an occlusive dressing, if you have like the Saran wrap type occlusive dressing, that would be perfectly okay to use. So basically, you're going to put a moist dressing over the gut, and then you're going to then put some Saran wrap over it. You're going to keep the moisture in, keep heat in, but now you have moisture on that. So, pain initially mild, but rapidly become intolerable. Cramps, nausea, weakness, thirst. Obvious lacerations and puncture wounds to abdomen. Lacerations and puncture wounds to the pelvis and middle or patients. Indications of blunt trauma, indications of developing shock, coughing up or vomiting blood. What is this? What are you talking about? Okay, for an abdominal injury. Rigid and or tender abdomen, distended abdomen. Patient tries to lie very still. Okay. Stay alert for vomiting. Keep airway open. Place patient on back with legs flexed at knees to reduce tension on abdomen muscles. Administer high concentration oxygen. Care for shock. Give nothing to patient by mouth, no matter how thirsty they tell you they are. Continually monitor vital signs. Transport as soon as possible. Additional steps for open abdominal injuries: control external bleeding and address all wounds. Do not touch or replace eviscerated organs. Apply sterile dressing moistened with sterile saline over wound site. Gosh, if we just read these slides, they just tell us, won't they?
Right?
Not in the order I like. Additional.
Use aluminum foil. It says that.
It says do not use aluminum foil.
It does. It's a note on the bottom. Do not use.
Foil has been known to cut.
Additional steps for open abdominal injury: do not touch or replace eviscerated organs. For large evisceration, maintain warmth by placing layers of bulky dressing over occlusive dressing. Do not remove any impaled object. Additional steps for open injuries: stabilize the bulky dressing bandage in place. Leave patient's legs in position found to avoid muscular movement that may move impaled objects. It's not going to let us watch our video. I'm so sad about that. Move on. Oh, chapter review. An open chest or abdominal wound is considered to be one that penetrates not only the skin but the chest and the abdomen wall to expose internal organs. Open chest and abdominal wounds are life-threatening. For an open chest or abdominal wound, apply an occlusive dressing. For both open and closed injuries, take appropriate standard precautions. Note the mechanism of injury. Protect the patient's airway and breathing. Administer high concentration oxygen by non-rebreather mask. Treat for shock and transport. A flail chest is characterized by paradoxical motion. If the patient is unable to adequately breathe, assist the patient's ventilation. Seal an open chest wound with an occlusive dressing taped on 3 sides or in some other manner so it acts as a one-way valve, allowing air out of the chest but not in. Alternatively, use a commercial device such as the Asherman chest seal with a one-way valve to relieve pressure. They're expensive, $50 versus a few cents.
Is that what that?
It's round with a valve in the middle of it.
That thing right there?
Yeah.
Where at?
The B section.
I think that's just an EKG electrode.
The B one says an Ashland and Chestville.
Oh, yeah, that is. I couldn't see that. I just the white spots.
No, it's not.
Yeah,
I know it's the electric thing.
that is an actual check.
Then,
So, what was that?
I don't know, some little kid said daddy.
Is do we have we do have Rebecca with us. Well, you just get on just now, Rebecca, trying to sneak in for the end of class.
I've been on, and it always drops you.
Trying to
I have
get
back
credit,
on.
huh? Okay.
But yeah.
She claims she's been here the whole time. We just now heard.
Oh, Preston wants to say hi.
Oh, hi.
All right. Carry on.
All right. Monitor the patient for changes and be prepared to manually relieve any pressure in the chest. Closed chest wounds are sometimes difficult to distinguish or may occur together. Assess the patient, including breath sounds, and maintain ventilation, oxygen, and perfusion. Oh, actually, just stop already. The patient who collapses in cardiac arrest after a force to the center of the chest should receive CPR and defibrillation like any other arrest from the cardiac cause. If a patient develops signs of a tension pneumothorax, arrange immediately for ALS intercept to transport promptly to a facility that can treat this injury. Most likely your ALS unit will be able to initially treat it, long-term treatment, any chest tube. But when solid abdominal organs are injured, life-threatening amounts of blood loss can occur. When hollow abdominal organs are injured, their contents spill into the abdominal cavity, causing irritation and sometimes life-ending infections. Blunt trauma, penetrating trauma, and compressions are mechanisms that can injure the chest and abdomen. Open or closed pertains to the integrity of the chest or abdominal wall after injury. Obviously, in open, you have exposed guts, and closed, the skin is intact. Seal open chest wounds to prevent air from entering the chest cavity. They've said that like 10 times now. Closed chest and abdominal wounds bear a high risk for underlying organ system damage and internal bleeding. Use mechanism of injury and patient assessment to recognize the signs and symptoms of shock. EMT should learn signs and symptoms and treatment procedures for specific chest and abdominal injuries. I think we just did, didn't we? Questions to consider. Is the patient's breathing adequate, inadequate, or absent? So if it's adequate, what do we do on our initial assessment? Okay, move on, right? If it's adequate, we're going to go ahead and move on. If their breathing is inadequate, what are we going to do? We're going to address that issue that is causing that, right? And then absent, if it's absent, we're going to breathe for them. Is the patient displaying signs of shock? Is there an open wound in the chest that needs to be sealed? Is the patient displaying signs of a tension pneumothorax? Is there an open wound in the abdomen that needs to be addressed and covered? All right, critical thinking. You are caring for a patient who was shot in the chest with a nail gun. Ah, shit. You applied an occlusive dressing around the wound. The patient is suddenly deteriorating. He is having extreme difficulty breathing and his color has worsened. Breath sounds have become almost totally absent on the side with the impaled nail. What complication might you suspect is causing his worsening condition, and how could this be corrected? Yeah. Okay. Good. So we have a lung that's being collapsed. Okay. Good. What can you guys try to correct this? We're gonna call ALS.
We're gonna put the dressing on.
Well, you put the occlusive dressing over it already. Yeah. Make sure that you actually is able to have the perfect. You may have to take that air up as they breathe out and let it burp, and then place it back. Okay, so check your occlusive dressing. You may have a hemothorax, so you may hit a vessel of some sort. And now there's blood in there. You have a hemonema. Chest tube balls can help that guy at that point.
You can't do those.
No, you can't do that.
Do you get to do those?
Nope. We could do what's called a weight pneumothorax kit, which is they also call them mini chest tubes and things like that. But an actual cut a hole, insert a chest tube, cut a hole so we can figure in there, and then insert a chest tube. No, we cannot. It's kind of surprising that we can't.
Can you put a needle through their part with electricity?
Yeah.
You can't put a hole in the side.
We could do surgical airway, so I could cut into your throat and insert an airway, but I can't do a chest tube. There's a lot of services, air medical services that are trying to get chest tubes on their protocols. So you obviously go through more training and blah blah. I have a hard time accepting that unless that air medical service wants to pay that person more. I think I personally feel, and this is a soapbox saying for me, I personally feel that EMS, especially on the paramedic side, the liability and responsibilities become so great that it has grossly outpaced the pay level. And I'm not saying that paramedics should be making doctor money or anything like that. Not what I'm trying to say. But I am saying that whenever a person that works at 7-Eleven makes more for their shift as a paramedic does, there's a problem there. And I understand the whole model of EMS really doesn't allow for that. Something needs to change because where nurses have it all right is because they see 15 patients in an ER in a 12-hour shift or more, sometimes 20, 30. They have a high patient load. We don't have that high patient load. But for our skill level, we are severely underpaid for our skill level. I mean, even on aircraft where you have a nurse and a paramedic sitting right next to each other, that nurse is probably making $5 more an hour than that paramedic. And they're a team with equal responsibility and liability and skill sets. That nurse actually has to do more training to come up and work on that helicopter. The paramedic, now they're starting to make them do extra certifications, but it's not more training. It's what we do, I'm not bagging on nurses, by the way. I just feel like I feel that we really have to stop asking paramedics to take on more skills until we find a way to pay them for those skills. They're going to do this community paramedicine now, where I go out as a paramedic to a patient's house and basically do a house visit and determine whether they need to go to the hospital or do I prescribe them an antibiotic or do I, whatever they're doing. Like, wait a minute, no, this isn't right. This is, and I don't agree with it. I'm done with class tonight. If you guys have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. You guys have any questions? I'm guessing that's no. That's like a million.
Nope, it's good.
Oh, okay. No, it wasn't a million.
Good night.
Good night. Everybody have a good night. Miss you guys.